10 Shadows and Silver, the Dimmer Vault Heist. The Crows were in dire need of coins. The new underground hospital was bleeding their funds dry, and with the expenses piling up, Jack knew they needed to act fast. That's when he remembered the treasure map he'd swiped during the train heist, an opportunity that had been gathering dust for far too long. Jack spread the map out on the table, eyes glinting with excitement. He motioned to Tobias, who had just walked in, looking as cautious as ever. "This," Jack said with a grin, tapping the map, "is our ticket to making some serious money. I've been holding on to this since the train job. Time to find out what it's worth." Tobias frowned, leaning in closer to study the faded parchment. "Jack, I don't know. Treasure maps are tricky. Could be nothing, or worse, it could lead us into something we don't want to mess with." Jack waved off his concerns, eager and relentless. "Or it could lead us to something huge. Come on, Tob, you're good at finding things out. See where it points, and I'll cut you in for a nice chunk." Tobias sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Alright, fine. I'll check it out, but I'm telling you, if this leads to trouble," Jack cut him off with a slap on the back. "Trouble's where the money is, my friend. Trust me, this is gonna pay off." 2 days later, Tobias returned, though his expression wasn't the hopeful one Jack had been waiting for. He handed Jack a small piece of paper, clearly uneasy. "It's pointing to a vault. But not just any vault, the Dimmer sisters' vault. They rent it out to people who don't want to store their goods, legally." Jack's eyes lit up. "The Dimmer sisters. That's perfect. We're talking serious loot. This is exactly the kind of score we need." Tobias raised an eyebrow. "You do realize how dangerous this is, right? They don't just let people walk in and take what they want. I found a guy who can get us the key, but it'll cost 3.5 coins. After that, we're on our own." Without a second thought, Jack grinned and nodded. "Done. I'll get you the coin. Let's get that key, Tob. We're about to hit the jackpot." The next morning, Jack called the crew together in their hideout. He was buzzing with excitement as he unfolded the map on the table, and next to it, the key Tobias had secured, a thin, metallic card with an inscription etched into it. Harlequina, Rabbit's Foot, and Harry Potter all leaned in as Jack explained the plan. "Alright, everyone, listen up," Jack began, barely able to contain his excitement. "We've got a job. A big one. We're going after a vault the Dimmer sisters used to store some serious goods, money, artifacts, whatever you can think of." Harlequina's eyes narrowed, crossing her arms. "The Dimmer sisters? Are you crazy, Jack? You've heard the stories. People who mess with them, disappear." Jack waved her concerns away, his grin widening. "Relax, Harley. We're not gonna cross them. We're just borrowing a little something. In and out, clean and simple." Rabbit's Foot, the strategist, examined the map with a focused expression. "If we're going up against the Dimmer sisters, this needs to be airtight. They're not going to have just normal security, we'll be dealing with otherworldly threats. We need a plan. And that's why I've got you, Rabbit," Jack said confidently. "You make the plan, I handle the crew, and we all walk out richer than ever." Harry, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up, his curiosity piqued. "A Dimmer sisters vault? They've gotta have magical stuff in there. Spells, artifacts. This could be incredible." Jack clapped his hands together. "Exactly, Harry. This is more than just a heist, it's an adventure. Magic, treasure, danger, it's all waiting for us." Harlequina, however, wasn't convinced. She crossed her arms tighter, her frown deepening. "You're way too excited about this. Jack, this could get us killed. The Dimmer sisters don't play games, and they've got powers none of us understand. Fear's not gonna get us anywhere, Harley," Jack shot back, still beaming. And besides, we've got the best crew in Doskvol. We can handle this. Rabbit, still studying the inscription on the key, looked up. The steps of the living attract the starving. Sounds like a puzzle. They're warning us. We should be careful, this might not be as simple as it looks. Exactly, Jack replied, undeterred. And we'll figure it out when we get there. For now, let's focus on the prize. We need this money, and this is our shot. Harry grinned. I'm in. I want to see what kind of magic those sisters have stashed away. Harlequina sighed, shaking her head. Fine. But if this goes south, Jack, I'm holding you responsible. Jack chuckled. Deal. Alright, team, let's start planning. We're robbing the Dimmer sisters, and we're going to come out of this with more coin than we've ever seen. The group exchanged glances, each of them feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. But with Jack's boundless excitement, Rabbit's calm strategy, Harry's fascination with magic, and Harlequina's reluctant acceptance of the risks, they were ready. It was time to pull off the heist of a lifetime. The night was eerily quiet as the crows approached the spot marked on the map, an isolated cluster of trees in Charterhall Park. Jack led the way, his eyes gleaming with excitement. This is it, he said, pointing to an ancient oak. Tobias said the entrance would be hidden right here. He ran his fingers along the bark until he found the thin crack that would fit the key card. Staring at the inscription one last time, he muttered, the steps of the living will attract the starving. What the hell does that even mean? Rabbit Foot, trailing behind, kept glancing around, feeling an odd sensation prickling at his skin. The rustling of leaves caught his ear, and he briefly thought it was just small animals scurrying about. But there was something else. Something heavier in the air, something that made him uneasy. His mind drifted back to the inscription on the key card, the steps of the living attract the starving. It felt like it applied to this moment, though he couldn't fully grasp how. Still, the growing sense of unease made him suggest, keep low. Crawl if possible. Just a hunch. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him, something lurking in the shadows. For a moment, he wondered if it could be the evil spirit from the Millennium Ring, but there was no time to dwell on it now. Harlequina stood behind Jack, arms crossed tightly. I don't like this, Jack. There's something wrong about this place. I can feel it. Relax, Harley. We've handled worse. This is just another job, Jack replied, pushing the key card into the slot. The bark slid open with a soft groan, revealing a descending stone corridor. Harry Potter, eyes wide with curiosity, stepped forward eagerly. I'll go first. Who knows what kind of magic they've got down here? I've got a good feeling about this. He was always drawn to mysterious magic, and his excitement was palpable. Rabbit Foot lingered behind, still wary, his eyes darting to the tree-line. The sense of being watched grew stronger, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. The sounds in the trees were faint but persistent, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something else, something unseen, was lurking in the shadows just out of sight. I'll keep an eye on the door, Rabbit said quietly, keeping his voice measured despite the unease gnawing at him. We don't want any surprises. Jack, you and Harry scout ahead, but be careful. The Dimmer sisters don't leave their vaults unguarded. Inside the corridor, the air was damp and cool as they descended into the earth. The path opened into a large, dimly lit chamber. Harry, crouching near the entrance, gestured for Jack to stop. Look. There's something wrong here. The smell hit them first, rotten meat. Jack grimaced as his eyes landed on 5 bodies scattered across the floor. They were male, decaying, each still gripping a short sword in their hand. Harlequina, who had cautiously followed them in, shivered. This is bad, Jack. Really bad. We shouldn't be here. Calm down, Harley, Rabbit said quietly, kneeling beside her. We need to think. Look at the inscription again, the steps of the living attract the starving. We can't walk through this room without triggering something. Harry's eyes darted between the bodies and a macabre sight on the walls, a human eye embedded on either side of the door, staring lifelessly into the room. Those eyes, they're watching us. If we're not careful, those bodies will react. Jack, take care of the eyes. We can't risk it. Jack hesitated, glancing back at Rabbit, his hands steady but his heart pounding. You think they'll wake up? He asked, his voice tense. Rabbit murmured the inscription again, the steps of the living attract the starving. Of course. We can't walk. We have to crawl. Quietly. No sound, no movement they can detect. The weight of the situation settled on all of them as they prepared to make their next move, knowing that any misstep could bring the dead to life. Harlequina's nerves tightened as she crouched to the floor. You've got to be kidding me. Crawling through a room full of dead bodies. This is insane. Insane but necessary, Rabbit replied coolly. Stay low, stay quiet, and we'll be fine. With a deep breath, Jack nodded and got down on his hands and knees. Let's do this. They crawled slowly, carefully disarming each corpse as they moved past them, every sound making Harlequina's breath hitch. Harry was right behind Jack, eyes gleaming with excitement. I knew this would be thrilling, he whispered. This vault is bound to have some incredible magic inside. Just stay focused, Jack whispered back, his voice sharp. We're not out of the woods yet. Finally, they reached the far side of the room, facing a second door. It had another inscription carved into the wood, Know thyself and where you come from. Harry leaned closer, reading it aloud. Interesting. Seems like some sort of riddle. Rabbit stood up slowly, brushing the dirt from his clothes. Everyone, stay alert. We're walking into unknown territory now. I've had a bad feeling from the start, Harlequina muttered, her arms crossing tightly as her eyes darted back to the bodies. Let's just get this over with and get out of here. We'll be out soon enough, Jack said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Just stay sharp, and we'll all walk out richer than before. But as they stood before the door, the ominous presence of the room and the inscription on the door made it clear, whatever lay ahead was far from simple. The second room was an unsettling contrast to the dark chamber they had just crawled through. Bright lights filled the space, illuminating 8 large mirrors mounted on the walls, 4 on each side. Jack's footsteps echoed slightly as he scanned the room, his excitement tempered by caution. Rabbit's foot muttered the inscription from the last door under his breath, Know thyself and where you come from. He stared at the mirrors, trying to piece together what they meant. This has to be a clue, something about these mirrors. Harry, Rabbit called over his shoulder. Ever seen anything like this? Harry Potter squinted at the mirrors, tilting his head in confusion. No, nothing like these, but they're definitely enchanted. I'd bet my hand on it. His voice was laced with curiosity, but there was an edge of excitement. He couldn't help but feel that they were on the brink of something magical. Harlequina, however, wasn't so optimistic. She narrowed her eyes, taking a step closer to one of the mirrors. They're not reflecting the light right, she muttered, her voice low with concern. These aren't normal mirrors. They're enchanted, and I don't like it. Whatever they're for, it can't be good. Best to avoid being reflected then, just in case, Rabbit advised, always the strategist. He knelt beside one of the mirrors, carefully tilting it downward, aiming to neutralize its gaze. Stay low and stay out of view until we know what's going on here. Jack crouched nearby, feeling the tension in the air. Good idea. We can't risk walking into some kind of trap. He watched as Rabbit lowered the second mirror, but just as it was about to lock into place, the heavy glass slipped from Rabbit's grasp and shattered on the floor. The sound was deafening, echoing off the walls. Jack tensed, eyes wide. Damn it, Rabbit. What now? Suddenly, from the remaining mirrors, shapes began to emerge, figures that were eerily familiar. Reflections of themselves stepped out of the glass and stood, staring blankly at the crows. Harry's eyes went wide with panic. What the hell is that? Without thinking, Harry pulled out his pistol and fired at his reflection. The bullet hit the mirror Harry in the chest, but instead of flesh, the wound cracked and splintered as though made of glass. It's not real. Harry gasped. It's like glass. Jack, following a sudden instinct, aimed his pistol at a nearby mirror instead of the reflection. He fired, and as the glass shattered, his reflection broke into pieces as well, collapsing into glittering shards on the floor. Take out the mirrors, he yelled to the others. That's how we get rid of them. Harlequina, her nerves already on edge, had enough of the guessing game. She ripped a small explosive from her pack and threw it across the room toward the far end. Everyone down, she shouted, covering her ears. Now. The explosion reverberated through the chamber, the force shattering all of the mirrors at once. The sound was almost unbearable, but when Jack looked up, all the reflections had disintegrated into piles of glass. He let out a heavy breath of relief, shooting a look at Harlequina. You saved our asses there. This could have gone real bad. Harlequina was still on edge, her eyes darting toward the next door. I just hope that was the worst of it, she muttered. I've got a bad feeling this isn't over. Rabbit, ever vigilant, approached the door at the opposite end of the room. He paused, inspecting yet another inscription carved into the wood, "Greed will distract the snake." He read it aloud, frowning as he mulled it over. What could that mean? Jack, feeling more confident now, clapped Rabbit on the shoulder. We'll figure it out. We've made it this far, and we're still standing, aren't we? Yeah, Harry added, his curiosity still burning. Let's see what's waiting for us in the next room. I'm sure we haven't even scratched the surface of what's hidden down here. Harlequina sighed, pulling out another explosive, just in case. Let's hope whatever's next doesn't require me blowing the whole place to hell. In the next room, the crows found themselves staring at 5 large boxes, the loot they had come for. Jack's eyes lit up the moment he saw them. This is it, he whispered excitedly. The treasure. The room was expansive, and in its center stood a massive marble statue of a snake, coiled atop a pedestal. Rabbit's foot, always cautious, repeated the inscription from the last door, "Greed will distract the snake." Harry, scanning the room with wide eyes, suddenly gasped. I know what this is, he exclaimed, his voice rising with both fear and fascination. This is a powerful animated enchantment. It reanimates objects. Rare and deadly magic like this doesn't just guard loot for no reason. That snake is going to come alive if we try to take those boxes. Of course, Harlequina muttered. It wants treasure. That's its goal, right? That's what it's guarding. Rabbit nodded, deep in thought. The clue fits. The snake's an enchanted guardian, immune to both magic and physical attacks. Made of marble, too, nearly indestructible. Jack suddenly snapped his fingers, a wild grin crossing his face. What if we lure it away? Distract it with something valuable? Rabbit's eyes lit up at the idea, always quick on his feet. If we can lead it out, far enough from the vault, we could even use it as our own guardian back at the base. Jack handed Rabbit a valuable ring he'd pocketed earlier, and together they planned to bait the snake. Rabbit approached the statue cautiously, ring in hand, while Jack slipped back into the previous room, waiting for the plan to unfold. As Rabbit neared the statue, the air around him grew tense, crackling with the energy of the enchantment. The snake's marble eyes gleamed, and then, in a terrifying instant, the statue sprang to life. Its smooth, cold body uncoiled from the pedestal, and it lunged toward Rabbit with a menacing hiss. It's alive! Rabbit yelled, sprinting toward the doorway. The snake was right on his heels, marble fangs bared as it chased him into the previous room. Just as Rabbit cleared the door, he glanced back to see the snake pause at the threshold. It didn't follow him out. Instead, it turned and slid back into the room, its cold gaze locking onto Harlequina. "Harley! Run!" Rabbit shouted. Harlequina's face went pale as the massive snake lunged toward her. She dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's fangs. "I hate snakes," she screamed, sprinting toward the door with the snake in pursuit. The marble creature's tail whipped out, smashing into the walls with terrifying force as it tried to close in on her. Harry, seeing no other option, raised his hand and focused on the animated snake. "I'll try to control it," he shouted, beads of sweat forming on his brow. His magic wrapped around the snake's enchantment, and for a brief moment, he felt its mind submit to his will. "It's working," he gasped. "But I can't hold it for long. Get the boxes, now." Without wasting a second, Jack, Rabbit, and Harlequina rushed to grab the boxes. Each one was heavy, but adrenaline fueled their movements as they lifted the treasure. Harlequina, still shaken from her close call with the snake, moved as fast as her legs could carry her. Harry's face was strained as he struggled to keep control of the snake, its marble body twitching as it tried to resist his command. With the boxes in hand, the group made their way toward the exit. But as they re-entered the first room, things took a turn for the worse. From the shadows, the corpses that had been lifeless before now stirred, rising to their feet with unnatural jerks. Rotting, reanimated zombies lurched toward them, blocking their escape. "Not again!" Harlequina cried, terror flashing in her eyes. "I can't deal with this." Two zombies lunged at Harlequina, their decayed hands reaching for her. She screamed, swiping wildly with a blade she had pulled from her belt, barely managing to slash at one of them. "Get off me," she shrieked, her voice cracking with fear. The undead's decayed fingers grasped at her arms, pulling her closer as she struggled to break free. Jack, fending off another zombie with a hard swing of his gun, kicked it back and shot it in the head. "Harley, hang on," he yelled, firing at one of the zombies attacking her. The bullet shattered its skull, sending it crumbling to the floor. Rabbit jumped in, stabbing the second one in the chest with a long dagger, before pushing Harlequina out of the way. "Keep moving!" Rabbit shouted, his eyes sharp with determination. As they fought, Harry's control over the snake faltered. The enchantment was too strong, and the snake's marble form began to break free from his grip. "I can't hold it much longer," Harry shouted, forcing his magic to its limits. The snake thrashed in the distance, ready to strike at any moment. Finally, after a frenzied, desperate struggle, the group managed to defeat the remaining zombies and make their way out of the vault. Gasping for breath, they bolted into the open air, the heavy boxes clutched in their arms. Harry staggered, releasing his control over the snake just as they made it out. The enchanted guardian slithered back into the vault, returning to its pedestal. Outside, the crows collapsed in relief, the weight of the treasure heavy in their hands. Jack grinned from ear to ear, the thrill of the heist still pumping through his veins. "We did it. We actually pulled it off." Harlequina, still catching her breath, laughed shakily. "I thought that damn snake was going to eat me. I hate snakes, but we made it." Rabbit, always calm in the aftermath, gave a satisfied nod. "The clue worked. Greed distracted the snake just like I thought." He glanced down at the boxes they'd risked their lives for. "Now let's see what all this was for." Harry, exhausted but exhilarated, leaned against the wall. "I've never controlled something that powerful before. That was intense." He grinned, feeling a sense of accomplishment. As they headed back to their base, carrying the heavy loot with them, the weight of their success sank in. They had faced enchanted guardians, undead corpses, and nearly everything had gone wrong, but they had survived. And with the treasure in hand, the crows knew this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Excitement buzzed through the air as they wondered just how much gold and glory awaited them inside the boxes.